Welcome back to Bleach Revisited. I am Karkur Gold, your host in this journey where we reread every single chapter of the Bleach manga, analyze the narrative and structure, respond to the series, and provide connections between the chapters that we're reading and the series as a whole. If any of that interests you more than any other part, feel free to chop around in the video. But without further ado, let us begin with Chapter 32 of Bleach. A hero is always with me. Oh! What are you gonna do, Kanoji? Kanonji style, ultimate secret principle. Cannonball. What? What is that? You really think you could kill a hollow with that? Nah, even you wouldn't be that. Kanon. Huh? What is that? What do you think you're... Destroy! What the... It's free. Wow. That wasn't bad. Good job, Kanonji. Now, leave the rest to me. It's in your hands now, hero. I'm exhausted. Good luck to you in your battle. You are forever my friend. Bleach. Chapter 32. A hero is always with me? Whoa! Darn, I can't split its head with my hands glued together. That's my boy! I mean, my friend! Bisect that monster with one stroke! Finish him off! You can do it! I believe in you! I believe! Shut up! Ugh. Hey. Whoa! Ah! Wait! Hey! Whoa! Wait, too high! Whoa! Ah! Boy! Where are you going? Boy! Don't leave me! It's Mr. Kanonji! Mr. Kanonji has emerged from the explosion and smoke! He appears to be shouting something! What? Don Kanonji's on his feet! Curse you, evil spirit! You fled to the roof! Beyond my reach, but you won't escape me! Cut the commercial! To the roof! Go up to the roof! Hurry! Don Kanonji, you must get to the roof! Going as fast as he can. I'm tougher than you think. The last place was too small. Plus, I had to protect Don Kanonji, so I couldn't really fight. But now that he's not here, you're toast. Sorry to keep you waiting, boy. He's here. Huh? Ah! Run! Run, Kanonji! Huh? Unfortunately, right now I can barely stand up. Then why do you come up here? Crap. Ah! Sorry. It's all over. He did it! Bravo! You're a wonder boy! I knew you could do it! Well done! You defeated him. With the power of justice you got from me, you are indeed my Kanonji. Don't jump for too much joy. Why, boy? What are you saying? You defeated the monster. Why aren't you happy? Hmm? What is that? The monster's skin is crumbling away. It can't be. I cleansed that man's soul. Boy, what's happening? I told you, it wasn't a monster. It's called a hollow. Some spirits have chains attached to them. When they tear free, a hole is left in their chests. Then they become irrational monsters. Hollows. A hole in their chests. But I thought by opening the hole and breaking the chains, I was freeing them. Oh no, then everything I've done. I don't know why, but the spirits that exploded in front of you didn't become hollows, right? This time was different. You didn't know anything about hollows, did you? I'm not saying you did the right thing, but feeling bad now won't help. But, but I was foolish. Uh, hey, no more tears, hero. Your public is waving to you. Go on, wave to them. That's what a hero does, right? Boy, thank you. It was such a splendid fight. I honor you. Your courage, your quick thinking, and your strength. Please keep lending me your help. Does he think I'm his partner or something? Well, maybe sometimes. Thank you. From this day forth, you shall be my #1 disciple. Demoted? Like I said, I don't believe in that stuff. Cancer. You're in fine form this week. You'll make a new friend, and a new world will open up to you. Trophy from this battle. Don Kanonji Fan Club to my #1 disciple. Forced upon him as he was leaving. That is it for Chapter 32, in which we start to conclude this arc with Don Kanonji. We get the finishing of that hollow and the outcome of that battle. Kind of neat. Of course, I like it. As I said before, I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this one on our reread. Getting back to the beginning here, as we begin our analysis and review. I say review, it's more a response, right? Anyway, yeah, so I like that we start, from where we left off. What I kind of wish we had a little bit more of is really establishing like the hollow having this cane stuck in its jaw, keeping it from biting down on Kanoji. I mean, like this, it's there, like here and here especially. We get a lot of really good reaction shots from the hollow, but I just wish maybe there was a little bit more. But this does work kind of to instantly bring us back to the encounter and the moment that we were coming off of, in which Kanoji is going to use his ultimate final technique, which is the Kanon Ball. And I love that it is just like this little tiny dinky spirit orb. And that he doesn't even use it to defeat the Hollow, but he uses it to free Ichigo, which is pretty cool. It's a neat change from what we expected, right? I mean, all of this is probably not what you might have expected on a first read. But I love especially how this moment is sold with the characters being drawn in a much simpler style and just the little ball like chugging very slow from his hand up to the sword. This expression on Ichigo is especially great. And then it just like kind of dinks into it and does this huge explosion that frees the sword from the ceiling, which is pretty cool, despite it being otherwise completely underwhelming. But you think about it, like obviously we deride it and we call it underwhelming. But for a human to be able to literally make a like spiritual explosive like that is pretty cool. I mean, this guy didn't go to school for, casted demon magic. So, it's played as a gag, but I think it also highlights kind of interestingly that Don Kanoji really does have more power to him. But of course, the other kind of situational thing that I think is interesting here too is that he doesn't just use that power to strike down the Hollow or make a feeble attempt at it, but that he recognizes that Ichigo probably knows what he's doing, and he helps to free Ichigo's sword. Yeah. But obviously that we don't even get Don Kanoji really getting hurt. He just gets tossed aside, and he's already exhausted and completely done. I do like this chapter cover. It's cute. I don't know that I've ever seen like a record player that you could run two different sets of headphones from like that. I mean, I'm used to having, like the MP3 player, or even, God forbid, like the Walkman, you know, the portable CD players where you just share a headphone with a friend. But having two different jacks without having a splitter is kind of interesting. But it is, I mean, regardless, it's a pretty neat chapter cover for a chapter that doesn't really involve either Tatsuki or Orihime. I like both of their outfits a good bit here too. Anyway, what's important is Ichigo gets a pretty meaty kind of slice into him, but I like this kind of establishment of that he can't split its head with his hands glued together. Maybe because he doesn't have the precision, or he just can't get a really effective grip on his sword to do it. I don't know. Yeah, I love he's like cheering Ichigo on. Ichigo just wants him to shut up so he can kind of take this seriously, which maybe a lot of fans are feeling that way too, right? They just want a serious fight, but the point isn't even really that. Yeah, this pretty pretty cool. I really like this art of it skimpering up the wall of the hospital. I think this is an effective page turn action shot where we get it exploding out of the wall with Ichigo on its side, and then it running up and carrying him there. Kind of cute that Ichigo has this sort of fear of heights, this vertigo maybe. Because he starts to feel like he's too high up. Even though, we got established before, he could just stand on the air. At the very least, he was doing that in the fight with Acid Wire. So it's not like he's going to fall and hurt himself. He's a spirit, ghost properties. Anyway, the Don Kanoji seems to kind of remember that he's on his show, and he makes a big performance out of it. Little cut to commercial is pretty good. Lots of I think effective the comedic bits in this chapter, even though it's pretty action heavy and we do get a conclusion to the fight. A lot of the artistic focus seems to be on doing the comedy, which you don't expect as much. It's more of a battle series. It also seems like a good excuse to not have to draw Ichigo's hand or the hilt of his sword. Maybe Kubo just wasn't feeling it those weeks. Anyway, yeah, I love this thing's. I think the Hollow has a very good expression, both for just for being very emotive. It works incredibly well, especially the difference between these two panels here. As I said before, Kubo really likes setting up this main character, or at least our sort of point of view straight man character reacting to those comedic scenes here. I do really like the this is a great comedic bit for me. Like the whole oh yeah, the worst thing about that last thing was Takanoji's there. I couldn't really fight, but now he's not here. He immediately slams open the door. I love that they both kind of turn and leer at Don Kanoji like, the fuck, get out of here. It's good. But Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, here you get that same framing again. Likes that kind of comedic shot. Um, Here we do get an example of Ichigo being pretty quick because the Hollow's got a lead on him and he still gains on it before he comes and delivers this slash that is so powerful. I love that it knocks it. Like, you can, especially with the way that the plating is shown, you can really see the Hollow getting knocked aside and into this railing here. And then, kind of interesting is, like, as its mass starts to crumble, he immediately steps in and ends the fight with, signature kind of overhead big slash. Yeah. I mean, the meat and bones of this chapter really is this exchange as we finally get to it, where, Kanoji's really excited about the end of this fight, and of course, Ichigo kind of has this revealed to him that clearly it's not a monster, it's the Hollow, the Hollow is actually the human spirit that he was antagonizing earlier. And Kanoji realizes that, he's been making some mistakes his entire career. Um, yeah, it's kind of this moment of defeat for him, and I think it's handled with a good bit of levity here. I say levity. What I mean, not lightheartedness, but it's handled here maybe in better nature than it could be in another kind of worsely written thing. Because Ichigo gives him this really inspirational message. I really love the turnaround Ichigo has, especially from like this panel onward, where we can really see the expression that he has. That like he really starts to kind of understand Don Kanoji as someone who really does care about these things, and that was like genuinely just misinformed and acting out of a very limited pool of knowledge. Uh, and yeah, he expresses that maybe the other spirits that he was with didn't become hollows for whatever reason, but you know, yeah, even though it's not the right thing, feeling bad about it's not gonna make it anything better. But I like that Ichigo kind of has this oh boy, I'm dying over this insistence on finally kind of understanding where Don Kanoji is coming from. And I think this really highlights that as he's like, look, yeah, you might have this moment where you're feeling a lot of this pain or anguish over some sort of mistakes that you've made, but what you really need to do is like face these people. You're actually this hero. Everyone's really excited for you. Or to these people, you're this hero, right? That's like this public image that he puts on to inspire others. And I think that is really, whenever I say that this is the the meat and potatoes of the chapter, or meat and bones, or whatever I said, um, that really this is like what this chapter and ultimately this arc kind of does is it doesn't just help to give us a lot of moments for all these other characters, which it certainly does, and this really effective foil for Ichigo, where Don Kanoji is this ostensibly kind of goofy character that takes his interactions with spirits in a much more it feels more lighthearted. At first, it feels kind of like he's taking advantage of people by playing up the whole spirit thing. And then you realize that of course he knows that it's real, and he plays it up because he wants to kind of inspire people, which is still a bit iffy. But then we finally get that like he actually really is trying to kind of help others, right? Not just in the image that he puts on, but also who he is. Um, and as Ichigo goes through understanding all of that the same way that we do, we get to see Ichigo kind of have a more mature understanding of this other character, and we get to see Ichigo really think about why he does the things that he does too. Um, Ultimately, one of the things that I really enjoy is this kind of turnaround here, where Ichigo, is like, hey, don't, no more tears. The public's waving to you. really kind of telling Kenoji to put on this more heroic face, right? To fall back into that persona for other people. And I think it reflects that Ichigo finally understands, like, that Don Kenoji and himself, they're both doing the same sort of thing, where, like, they might have some sort of trauma over, whatever it might be in the past, or something might be affecting them in one way or another. But whenever facing others, and really whenever trying to inspire and interact with others, um, they slip into a persona that they feel is maybe more affable, or more approachable, and even inspirational at times. So it's interesting. I talked about that before, right? The idea of characters and them masking themselves in one way or another. Obviously, the Hollows being literally having mask over themselves to hide their id, right? Their kind of the idea of the self, or the primal self, the id, right? The part of you that's just like a creature, like a animal that just wants to eat and procreate, and lash out with anger at things that it's frustrated with, etc., etc. All of those sorts of feelings and reactions. That's kind of where the hollows tend to be. But with these non-hollow characters, we get the opposite, where it's the ego that they mask. Um, and whenever I say that, I mean, like, it's the socially constructed self, um, versus, like, their kind of emotional self, and that there's a kind of masking going on there as well. It's not as literal, obviously, um, but that these characters have a different kind of self that they try to project than everything that they're feeling or everything that they're going through, because they understand that it helps to protect maybe themselves or others, or it helps to inspire them, or whatever it does, right? So we get a little bit of that here, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, the public can't see you crying. Like, you're this heroic figure. You need to inspire them. That's what you should do. And it takes a bit of kind of understanding for Ichi to come around on him, and really see, like, the value in Don Kanoji fulfilling that role. And then in a lot of ways, he's similar to Ichigo in the way in which he'll mask himself in a way, or perform this kind of identity. Obviously, Don Kanoji's identity is far more performed than Ichigo's, but there's a level of performance to both of them, and you see that too with Rukia. I think that's no mistake that all these characters have, like, these kind of put on performances. And I mean, again, we get that with Urahara, especially, where Urahara Kisuke, like, he puts on this kind of very happy-go-lucky sort of, like, goofy, even salesman sort of veneer. But then whenever things start to get serious, he's a very serious character, and he's got very serious kind of connections, and there's more going on there, right? And so that idea of masking is, I think, incredibly important to Bleach, and something that's really easy to overlook, even though literally the antagonists actually factually have mask. But thinking in a less literal sense, I think that's an important thing to touch upon, and an important thing to think about as you read the series, is really thinking about how these characters perform their identity versus what they're actually feeling or thinking, and why they're engaging inside of that, that outward projection, or that performance of self, what that really is affecting. Because I think it's very intentionally written that way. Um, yeah, eh. More on that other times. I'll try to bring it up too as it comes up whenever we have those moments, because I feel like that's a consistent theme throughout Bleach, is that sort of that sense of the masking of the self, for whatever purpose. Um, and yeah, it's interesting to see all the different things that Bleach has to kind of convey with that. Whew. But yeah, of course, we come back to this kind of triumphant moment for Kanonji. Uh, This guy wearing like a marijuana shirt. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, yeah, I love that, Kanoji really acknowledges Ichigo in a lot of ways, which I think that's another cool thing, is that it's not just Ichigo, acknowledging and understanding kind of where Kanoji's coming from and having a little bit more understanding of who he is, and being less sort of just frustrated with his existence. So it's humanizing for Ichigo in a lot of ways, I think. But it's also cool that from Don Kanoji, which would we come to understand is more human as well, we get this very honest compliment spree, where he really honors Ichigo in a lot of ways, and we get some of his best merits listed out here. I love that we get this handshake, and it's a very serious moment. Of course, immediately gets played for comedy, but I think that this is a great moment that often gets overlooked. The whole exchange between them, but I do love the punchline of Ichigo becoming Don Kanoji's number one disciple. The idea that despite all of this, Ichigo would be the disciple to Don Kanoji, that he'd be the number one student or underling, despite Ichigo clearly being like the superior force whenever it comes to dealing with hollows and the spiritual. But yeah, it's pretty good stuff. We get a reminder of those horoscopes. Of course, they did not take the time to translate all the other ones, just to let us know here that in fact it's that same horoscope that we looked at before. So it did come true. The idea to that being kind of like, I don't believe in that stuff being the thought from Ichigo, where it's like, yeah, there might be some truth in this spiritualism. Obviously, there was a lot of truth in Don Kanoji, despite the falsehoods that he would put on to give people belief and hope. And I think this kind of speaks towards that even despite kind of coming to an understanding with Don Kanoji, Ichigo still doesn't believe in, like, or really, he doesn't believe in like that level of falsehood or obvious kind of performance, if that makes sense. Like, like obviously he doesn't believe in horoscopes because that feels still kind of silly to him, and even if they're true, it still feels silly to him to an extent, right? Uh, Same thing with like Don Kanoji is always going to feel silly to Ichigo, even though Don Kanoji is legitimate. And I think that's another kind of point to take away from this that is neat, is that like you can enjoy something, or you can respect something without having to like it, if that follows. Like you can understand a thing. I say you can enjoy a thing without having to like it. That's not necessarily true. Those are pretty synonymous. But you can at least respect or understand a thing more, right? Uh, and not have to really believe in it or like it or back it, support it. I think believe in it maybe doesn't work as well, but yeah, even if there's merit to a thing, it's an interesting kind of moment to leave us off on. Certainly for Ichigo, especially, I think the bigger thing is like Ichigo's more concerned with himself rather than he is with how like the multitude see him, or existing as like this very public kind of entity. Um, there's a little bit of that there, where like horoscopes clearly they leverage this sense of spiritual significance to kind of give people a sense of purpose, right? But it's still very much it feels sleazy in a way, and it's still very much the service. I say service, it's not necessarily, but it's still very much this thing that's offered to people, right? And Ichigo's generally resistant towards those sorts of ideas of working for people that he doesn't know. um, are really leaning into these connections that aren't genuine or lived. Yeah, it's it's a neat. Like I say, whenever I say this is interesting, what I really mean is, it's something that I like to think about it, and it's maybe easy to overthink on it, but at the very least, it's a significant kind of detail that helps to get us to understand the character a little more. But yeah, that's it for analyzing this chapter. I don't have much else to say on it. As far as how I feel about the chapter, my response to it, I think it's a really solid way to end this fight. I will say one big thing here, and this is something that I've brought up before, so I don't want to really harp on it too much. But Ichigo finishing the fight with this big downward overhead slash. This has very clearly become a consistent kind of way for Ichigo to end a fight, right? That he has this, triumphant moment of turnaround, and he ends it in one of this big decisive slash. And that's become a repeated structure that we come to understand. Like, I don't think there was any part in this fight where we were meant to feel like this hollow is a real threat, that Ichigo might not be able to overcome it, that this fight was going to end in any way, you know, other than Ichigo ending the fight this way, unless it was to be a real surprise for one reason or another, right? Like another character getting involved, or John Kanoji, actually blowing it up with some sort of spiritual power, whatever it may be. And so, for some readers, that might be disappointing, especially if you're reading this from the perspective of it just being like a battle-focused shonen. Because if your main engagement with Bleach is, I want to read a bunch of cool fights, there's a lot of cool fights in here. I'm not gonna string you along on that, but what I will talk about is that a lot of the way that Kubo writes is by using these repetitious structures. And so, if you don't like Ichigo finishing enemies in one big decisive strike, I'm going to have to let you down. Because that's going to happen. It's already happened a couple of times. It's going to happen several more times throughout the manga. And so, it gets easy to kind of deride. And I think, in other stories you'll hear that too. The quickest comparison I can think on top of my head is something like, Dragon Ball, right? Where it's like, okay, well, he's gonna do a spirit bomb or a Kamehameha or whatever, and that'll be it, you know. Which is ironic because the spirit bomb doesn't even end most of the fights that it gets used in. But the idea that it'll be like one big over the top energy blast and that'll be the thing to fucking finally do in the fight, it's like, okay, well, that's not very exciting. Um, and I really think that the point isn't that. The point, isn't the way that the fight is concluded or the one triumphant moment that ends it decisively one way or the other. The point is that those structures, especially in Bleach, to bring it back to Bleach, that those structures exist to kind of set up a framework for a story that we understand, that we can follow along with without issue. And then the important thing is something other than those repeated elements. So, we have a lot of these same repeated elements here where it's like, okay, there's a hollow, Ichigo has to square off against it. He's going to defeat it with one decisive slice. So what's different? And obviously what's different here is Don Kanoji and all the interactions that he has there, as well as the sort of complications that come up over the course of the fight and how those get dealt with between, the characters that are involved. And, in other fights, it might be the exchange that Ichigo has with the Hollow, right? The kind of back and forth that they have, and maybe even revelatory moments for either, or like some sort of world building or whatever it may be. So there's always something there, and I think that's what I urge you to really think about, especially as we go through with this reread of Bleach. And that's something that I'm trying to look at too, is kind of where these narrative structures are repeated and for what purpose. Like if that's going to be the same, then what's the point of just going through the same motions? Then like what's different, right? What does this fight add, if not an interesting, satisfying? I say satisfying, an interesting, like kind of novel conclusion to a fight. Because I don't think a fight has to have a novel conclusion for it to be a satisfying sort of battle. Because we could be satisfied in these other ways, right? There could be other things that happen throughout the course of the fight that are interesting, or that build these characters or build this world in interesting ways. So it's something that I want to draw attention to, because very much this fight serves as sort of just background to have these interactions between Ichigo and Don Kanoji, and to also establish, another big thing with Kisuke kind of observing the way that Ichigo is fighting, right? The manner that Ichigo fights, that Ichigo's not really able to go all out and fight this Hollow, because his focus is on protecting others first and foremost, right? And that he couldn't really get into a good fight with this Hollow until he was, one, in the right environment with it, but two, whenever he didn't have to split his attention between fighting and protecting. So that's interesting. That will certainly come up more as we go along. But it's neat to think about here, and it's interesting to kind of see that come up here, because this chapter does serve a very good purpose that isn't just, oh hey, they found a new way to defeat this Hollow. So something to keep in mind whenever you're reading through this. I'm not going to say that every single encounter adds something new, but I'm going to try to certainly look for them, right? I think that's a worthwhile pursuit. But anyhow, let's finish up with that. That's basically all I have to say for response. I like the chapter. I like the arc. I like where it closes, especially on this moment of growth for both the characters, this humanization for both of them in a lot of ways. It's all good stuff. I think Don Kanoji's a neat addition to the cast. He's very different from everybody that we've had so far, especially with the spiritually aware characters. It's also neat to get another character that isn't just from Ichigo's group as well, so that we're starting to understand that there's a larger world outside of Ichigo's, just like his family and his high school friends, right? It's easy to forget that whenever the only other characters that we really have are, for these first 30 chapters have been Rukia and Urahara and the people at Urahara's shop. So it's neat to get all of that. Anyway, we're going to get into spoilers now. So if you don't want to hear anything spoiling the manga, well, this is your chance to get out. I'm going to drink a little bit of water because I am parched. That sound is me pouring water. The next sound will be me drinking water. And if you hate that audio, you should have muted it. I'm going to probably burp too. Oh, if I belch, that will just be great. I don't edit these. These are unscripted, unedited episodes, so you get what you get. And now we're going to get into spoilers. So, if you're interested in spoilers, if you want to see how this chapter connects to other chapters in the manga or the manga at large, well, here we are. So, going into chapter 32, yeah, it's kind of neat. So Kanoji's able to create this spirit bomb move, and it's neat that this obeys the same mechanics that Hado does, or Kido, right? Where he has a chance. In fact, if we go back to this previous chapter, my final act to leave you, let me fall like a leaf in honor and protecting you. Reading that, especially falling with Kanonji style ultimate secret principle or ultimate secret technique, whatever, Cannonball. I think the idea of having a whole phrase and then having the name of the thing to call, that certainly is a huge part of using Kido, and even releasing Shikai and Bankai, and thinking of the whole importance of naming things and willing things into kind of spiritual existence, right? That being something that Ichibei has domain over, and that he created all of this, right? That the whole concept of names is an important thing in Bleach, and evoking those names is a lot of what gives them power. It's interesting because essentially it shows that it's not like whenever we think about Kido, we can think of it as like a list with very clear defined, these spells exist, right? but it's very clear that you can conjure magic beyond that by just like evoking whatever you may happen to evoke through just like sheer force of will, which is pretty neat. It's not something we get a ton in Bleach. Like typically characters have to evoke a specific Hado or Kido or whatever that they've been taught. Or they're evoking their Shikai or Bankai, or Resurrection or whatever. So, it typically feels like it's more structured than kind of just willing things into existence. But here that very much happens. And it's neat to see that come from a fucking character like Don Kanoji of all things. But it is cool that we get that, and that's set up pretty early. I mean, clearly the whole chanting into a spell is a thing that Rukia has clearly set up with. There's the belching. It's coming now. that Rukia has set up the entire time, as this kind of construction. And so it's interesting here. Obviously, this is a gag on behalf of that, but this existing at all within the manga creates this idea of, yes, that like anyone that's spiritually capable could essentially manifest these things. Were they able to really direct their energy and call it into existence? So that's neat. It's a really, like even a human, which ultimately, I say even a human, I mean, humans are no different from Shinigami is the big sort of, I say big sort of reveal. I mean, the only difference is that they're spiritual entities versus, non-spiritual ones, right? So that's, it's neat. It's neat stuff. But yeah, it's not, not a lot there otherwise. Other than that, I wanted to mention that. There are some other connective things that I was thinking about. Him cheering Ichigo on and Ichigo wanting him to shut up, and then he couldn't focus with him being cheered on is cute. It reminds me a little bit of Master Masculine having James to cheer him on, except, that's played totally like Mask is the hero, which it's interesting to think about with Don Kanoji really insisting on this narrative of like, oh, I'm the hero, and then, he's going to cheer Ichigo on that way. And thinking about Mask in the same sort of way, where Mask saw himself as a superhero and had James to cheer him on, and that was literally his power. So I think it's really just kind of Kubo having fun with the idea of what constitutes a hero. Ichigo freaking out over it being too tall or too high up is kind of funny, especially thinking about his inner world being like high up in all the skyscrapers and everything. Trying to think of if there's anything else in here. I mean, there's that kind of exchange that they have, and Ichigo, of course, being Don Kanoji's disciple. Of course. I'm trying to think of what else really connects here for me. If there's anything here in all of this. Yeah, I don't know that this final kind of interaction has any larger sort of connection. I mean, it certainly shows like Kubo kind of understanding navigating these sort of public spheres, even if it's not for him, outside of just like his own sort of social interactions. But like, doing this whole public performance thing isn't for him. Which, obviously very much isn't for him whenever it's a negative sort of thing that's affecting personal relationships negatively. But yeah, otherwise, we get the courage, quick thinking, and strength. I don't know. It's neat because usually whenever people think about Ichigo, right, they're it's like, what qualities does he have as a protagonist? And it's usually, it's not always that you assign those to him, right? I mean, clearly, yeah, he's definitely courageous. He's definitely strong. Um, and like, quick thinking is kind of interesting, but yeah, he is very quick to respond and think smart about how to handle these sorts of situations, even whenever he's in sort of dire situations. So it's neat to think about how that kind of connects. I've been trying to really look at the places where he's got this sort of speed or celerity to him, um, because obviously his Bankai's whole shtick ends up being that he can move, like, condense all of his power and move very, very fast, right? At least his initial Bankai. That kind of gets dropped as an element moving forward. And I'm sort of okay with that to a degree, if only because the idea is that the other enemies end up being way faster, and Ichigo isn't near as practiced with it as he is with everything else. But I don't know. It's interesting to think about as well. How much there is that kind of leans into those greater power developments for Ichigo. Um, yeah, I don't know that the disciple stuff comes up again. Oh, I wanted to say that this character looks a lot. Maybe it's just the glasses, but reminds me a bit of Zale Aporo or Ilfort. I think it's just a design that Kubo sort of likes. Kubo likes glasses anyway. Putting glasses on various long-haired characters too. But yeah, that's it for the chapter. I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. If you see any other connections, please let me know. Not a lot going on this one. Enough to kind of point out a few things, but that's about that. Yeah, if there's anything that you saw connection-wise, let me know. If it's a spoiler, please be sure to indicate that in your comment so you're not spoiling anybody else that happens to go down into the comments section. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for following along with this video of Bleach Revisited. As always, I try to get one of these out every single day, so thank you for following me in that journey or watching this whenever you have. As always, take care. Remember that spirits are forever with you. And stay gold.